Imagine a moment when your mind is completely at peace. What if for just a little while your thoughts slowed down and you could finally feel calm and relaxed? No worries, no stress, no thoughts racing through your mind. Wouldn't that feel amazing? Well, tonight I'm going to share with you 10 Zen stories that have helped millions of people find exactly that kind of peace. By the end of this video, you'll discover how to quiet your mind and feel true inner calm. In today's busy world, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. We have so many things pulling at our attention: work, family, responsibilities, and it can be hard to find a moment of peace. Our minds are often full of thoughts that keep us awake at night, worrying about things we can't control. But Zen teaches us that peace is not something we need to search for outside of ourselves. It's something we can find within, no matter how chaotic the world around us may be. Zen is a practice that teaches us to be present, to let go of the noise in our minds, and to focus on the peace that is always available to us. Tonight's journey through Zen stories will help you release the stress and find that peace. Each story carries a lesson, one that will help you relax, breathe deeply, and feel more at ease. These lessons have been shared by Zen masters for centuries, and they have helped people just like you discover how to be still and calm in a world that never stops. The stories we will explore tonight are not just ancient teachings. They are simple yet powerful tools that will guide you toward a peaceful state of mind. These Zen stories teach us how to let go of anger, fear, and frustration, and how to embrace calmness and acceptance. It's not about pushing away our feelings, but about understanding them and learning to be at peace with whatever comes our way. Peace is not a far-off goal. It is something you can experience right now. You just need to learn to tap into it. As we go through each Zen story, let each one remind you that you don't have to struggle with your thoughts. You don't have to fight the stress. The peace you seek is already inside you, waiting for you to notice it. The Zen teachings will help you find it. I invite you now to make yourself comfortable. Sit back, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to relax. Let go of the day's worries and thoughts, and just be here in this moment. Each story you hear will bring you closer to a peaceful state of mind. You may feel the tension in your body start to release. Your breath will naturally slow down, and your mind will become calmer as you listen. By the time we finish, you'll have discovered how to quiet the noise in your mind, how to let go of stress, and how to find the peace that is already inside you. You'll learn that true peace doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within. And tonight, I'm going to show you how to unlock that peace. So, let's begin. Take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. You are safe here. You are at peace here. And you are ready to discover the calming wisdom that has helped so many others. Let's begin this peaceful journey together.
Now, we begin with our first Zen story, a story that teaches us a profound lesson about anger, assumptions, and the way we react to the world around us. This is the story of the empty boat. There once was a man who loved to row his boat on a peaceful river. Every evening as the sun began to set, he would take his boat out onto the calm waters of the river, feeling the gentle breeze against his face. The river would carry him effortlessly, and the peaceful solitude of the moment would fill him with serenity. It was his time to unwind, to forget about the demands of the day, and simply be present with the world around him. The light from the setting sun reflected off the surface of the river, and all seemed right in the world. But on one particular evening, as the man was gliding peacefully along the river, he noticed something troubling. Another boat was headed straight toward him. At first, he called out politely, "Be careful, you're coming too close." But the boat did not change course. It kept coming closer and closer, and soon he could see it was headed directly for him. A sense of irritation began to rise within him. How could this person be so careless? Couldn't they see that he was already out on the water, enjoying his peaceful ride? The closer the boat got, the more his frustration built. He shouted again, this time with more urgency, "Move aside! You're going to crash into me!" His heart raced with mounting anxiety and anger. His peaceful evening was slipping away, replaced by the growing tension of the approaching boat. Finally, as the two boats collided, the man's anger reached its peak. He was ready to shout at the careless boater, to express how disrespectful they were to him. But as he looked closer, he was struck with shock. The boat was empty. There was no one inside. It was simply drifting with the current, just like his own. In that moment, a profound shift happened within the man. His anger dissolved, just like a mist fading away with the morning sun. He sat there in complete stillness, feeling a deep sense of foolishness for letting his emotions control him. He had been so caught up in his assumptions, in the stories he had told himself about the other person's intentions, that he completely missed the truth of the situation. There was no one to be angry at. The boat had simply drifted, carried by the river's current, with no intention to cause harm or disrespect. What had changed in that moment? Not the situation. The boats had still collided. What had changed was his understanding of the situation. He realized that there was no intention behind the collision. It wasn't personal. The boat wasn't out to get him. It was simply floating along, carried by the river, and his anger, his frustration, and even his deep-seated resentment often arise not from the events themselves, but from the stories we create about those events. These stories are the projections of our own ego, our need to feel right, to feel important, to feel validated. How often do we react to the world based on assumptions? How often do we fill the empty boats in our lives with stories of disrespect, carelessness, or malice, even when none of those things exist? The driver who cuts us off in traffic, we assume they're being rude. The colleague who doesn't acknowledge our greeting, we assume they're ignoring us on purpose. The friend who hasn't responded to our message, we assume they don't care about us. And yet, these assumptions may not be true at all. The driver might be rushing to help someone in need. The colleague could be distracted by personal struggles. The friend might be going through a difficult time and doesn't know how to respond. We often let our ego tell us stories about others, stories that fuel our emotions and reactions. But just like the empty boat, there may be no intention behind these actions. They are simply drifting like the boat on the river, with no malice or personal affront intended. Zen teaches us to practice awareness and mindfulness. We are asked to observe our thoughts, emotions, and reactions without getting caught up in them. When we do this, we begin to realize that our thoughts, our emotional reactions, are often based on false narratives. They arise not from the truth of the situation, but from the stories we create about it. The key lesson from this story is that peace comes when we stop reacting to life based on assumptions. When we stop letting our ego fill the empty boats with judgment, frustration, and anger, we make space for calm to enter our lives. We begin to see the world clearly, without the fog of emotional turmoil clouding our vision. Take a moment now and think about a time when you felt frustrated or angry. Was it because of something someone did? Or was it because you filled an empty boat with a story about their intentions? A story that wasn't even true? Notice how, when you see things clearly, that anger can dissolve, just like the man's anger towards the empty boat. This is the first lesson of Zen. Peace comes when we stop reacting to the world with assumptions, and instead let go of our attachment to the ego. When we let go of the need to be right, when we let go of the need to control, we create space for peace to enter our lives. So as we reflect on this story, let's ask ourselves, how many empty boats are we carrying in our own lives? How many times have we filled them with anger, frustration, or resentment, only to realize that the boat was never meant to hurt us at all? Let this be the moment where you choose to empty your boats, to release your judgments, and to embrace the calm that comes when you stop reacting with anger. Now, take a deep breath with me. Let go of any tension you may be holding. Let the story of the empty boat remind you that peace begins with understanding. Understanding that not everything is personal, that not every frustration needs to be met with anger, and that just like the river carries the boat, life will carry us through if we allow it. With that, let's move on to the next story. And as we do, carry this lesson with you. You don't need to react to every storm in your life. Let go of the need to control, and let the peace within you rise up like the stillness of the river.
Now, we move to our second Zen story, a story that teaches us a valuable lesson about the nature of strength, flexibility, and how we face life's inevitable storms. This is the story of the bamboo and the oak. In a peaceful forest, there stood a mighty oak tree. The oak was tall, strong, and proud. Its thick branches stretched wide into the sky, and its roots dug deep into the earth. For many years, the oak had withstood the fiercest winds, the heaviest rain, and the most severe storms. The oak was known for its unyielding strength, standing firm in the face of all adversity. It was a symbol of power, of endurance. The oak tree had survived much, and it stood tall, seemingly invincible. But in the same forest, there was also a bamboo plant. The bamboo wasn't as tall nor as strong as the oak. Its trunk was thin and flexible. It swayed easily with the wind, bending with each breeze that passed. The oak would often look at the bamboo with disdain.
"Look at you," the oak thought. "You bend with every gust of wind. You are weak. You will never stand strong like I do. I am the one who endures, who remains firm. You will never be able to survive the storms as I have." For many years, the oak believed that strength came from being rigid, from standing tall and unyielding, no matter the forces around it. The bamboo, on the other hand, was gentle, bending with the winds, flowing with the rhythms of life. The oak never understood the bamboo. It thought that only by standing tall could one survive. The oak believed its strength was superior, its pride in its unbending nature stronger than the bamboo's flexibility. One fateful day, a violent storm began to approach the forest. The winds howled, and the sky grew dark with thick, swirling clouds. The trees swayed under the force of the storm, and the oak, as always, stood tall, ready to face the storm head-on. It rooted itself deeper into the earth and prepared for the fierce wind. "I am strong," the oak thought. "I will survive this storm as I have survived so many others." The bamboo, meanwhile, bent low, its slender stalks swaying gently with the wind. It did not fight the storm. It simply allowed the winds to move through it. With each gust, the bamboo bent, but it did not break. It moved with the wind, flexible and yielding, allowing the storm to pass over it. As the storm grew fiercer, the oak began to creak under the pressure. The mighty branches that had once reached high into the sky began to bend. The oak fought against the wind, resisting its force, holding on to its belief that it was strong because it stood firm. But the wind grew stronger, and the oak's branches began to snap one by one. The oak struggled, fought, and resisted, until eventually it broke under the strain. Meanwhile, the bamboo, though bending with every gust, remained unbroken. The storm passed, and the bamboo stood tall, just as it had before. The bamboo had bent, but it had not been destroyed. The storm had passed, and the bamboo had survived. The lesson here is clear and profound. True strength does not come from resisting life's storms, but from learning to bend with them. The oak's strength was in its rigidity, while the bamboo's strength was in its flexibility. The oak thought that to endure the storm, it needed to remain firm, to stand tall, to resist the forces around it. But in doing so, it broke. The bamboo, on the other hand, bent with the wind, adapted to the storm, and emerged unscathed. This story teaches us about resilience, the ability to adapt to life's challenges without breaking. Rigidity may feel like strength in the moment, but over time it can lead to exhaustion, stress, and even destruction. On the other hand, flexibility allows us to move through life's challenges with grace, to bend but never break. How often do we try to fight the forces in our lives thinking that we must be unyielding to survive? How often do we resist change, refuse to adapt, and cling to the idea that we must always be strong and steadfast, no matter the situation? The oak believed that strength came from standing firm, from resisting the forces around it. But this is not true strength. True strength is the ability to remain flexible, to bend with the winds of change, and to keep moving forward despite life's challenges. Take a moment now to think about your own life. Is there something you are resisting? A situation, a challenge, a person,
or even an emotion that you've been trying to control? What would happen if, instead of resisting, you allowed yourself to bend with the wind? What if you accepted the storm, let go of the need to control everything, and simply moved with the flow of life? Imagine yourself as the bamboo, bending with life's winds, flowing with the changes instead of fighting against them. Let go of the need to control everything. Release the idea that strength means being rigid, being tough, being inflexible. True strength lies in the ability to adapt, to bend when necessary, and to remain steady even when things are uncertain. Zen teaches us to accept the present moment as it is, without resistance. Resistance creates tension, stress, and suffering. But when we allow ourselves to bend like the bamboo, we let go of the struggle. We make room for peace, for ease, and for grace. We don't need to force our way through life's challenges. Instead, we can meet them with acceptance and flexibility. Take a moment to reflect now. Think about a challenge you are facing right now. How can you apply the lesson of the bamboo? How can you bend with the wind of that challenge instead of trying to resist it? How can you embrace the change that's happening in your life rather than fighting it? Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, feel the tension of resistance start to melt away. Let yourself bend with the wind and let the storm pass through you. You do not have to fight it. You do not have to stand firm in opposition. Simply allow yourself to bend, to adapt, and to move forward with grace. The bamboo reminds us that we are not weak when we bend. In fact, it takes great strength to adapt to life's changes with ease. The bamboo, though slender and flexible, remains unbroken by the storm. The oak, though mighty and strong, broke because it resisted. So, as you move through life, remember the lesson of the bamboo. Flexibility is strength. Adaptability is power. And when you face your next storm, remember that you do not have to stand firm in resistance. Instead, let the wind carry you. Let it move you. And you will find that, like the bamboo, you will stand strong, unbroken, and at peace.
Now, let's explore our third Zen story. A story that holds a profound lesson about obstacles, perseverance, and how we can find opportunity in the very challenges that seem to block our way. This is the story of the stone in the path. Once upon a time, there was a traveler walking along a path. The path was long and winding, stretching across fields and hills. The sun was warm and the sky was clear. The traveler was making good progress, enjoying the peaceful journey, when suddenly he came across a large stone blocking the path. At first, the traveler stood still, taken aback by the obstacle. The stone was too large to move easily, and it seemed to have no reason to be there. The traveler thought, "How frustrating. I was making such good progress and now I'm stuck." He tried pushing the stone with all his strength, but it didn't budge. His frustration began to rise as he thought about how long it would take to go around the stone or find another way. He stepped back and looked at the stone for a moment, and then, in an act of determination, he decided to remove the stone. He picked up a stick from the ground and began to dig around the stone, pushing and pulling, trying to clear the path. Hours passed, and despite all his efforts, the stone remained firmly in place. Tired and exhausted, the traveler paused and sat down to rest. The stone, however, remained stubbornly in his way. As he rested, a thought came to him. Instead of seeing the stone as just an obstacle, he decided to look at it from a different perspective. What if this stone is not here to stop me, but to teach me something? With this shift in thinking, the traveler realized that the stone had become part of his journey. Rather than struggling against it, he could choose to embrace the challenge. With renewed energy, the traveler approached the stone once more, but this time he did so with a mindful attitude. Instead of fighting, he gently pushed the stone out of the way. As he moved the stone, he noticed something amazing. The stone was not just an obstacle, it was an opportunity. Beneath it was fertile soil, a small patch of land that could now be used to plant seeds and grow new life. The stone had, in fact, created space for new growth. The traveler sat down next to the newly uncovered earth and reflected on what had just happened. The stone had been both a challenge and a blessing. It had forced him to pause, to change his approach, and to see beyond the surface of the obstacle. It had given him the chance to practice patience, mindfulness, and creativity. The lesson of this story is simple but profound. The obstacles in our lives are not always what they seem. What we often view as setbacks, as stones in our path, can actually be opportunities in disguise. Life's challenges do not come to punish us, they come to teach us. The stone, though it initially seemed like a hindrance, was actually a chance for the traveler to grow, to reflect, and to learn a new way of moving forward. How often do we encounter obstacles in our lives and immediately feel frustrated, angry, or defeated? How often do we see life's difficulties as roadblocks that keep us from moving forward? We all face stones in our path, whether they're struggles in our personal lives, challenges at work, or moments of self-doubt. But Zen teaches us that the path is not meant to be easy. It is meant to be a space for growth, for learning, and for deepening our understanding of ourselves in the world. Take a moment now. Think about the obstacles you're currently facing. Are you seeing them only as problems, or can you begin to see them as opportunities? What lessons might these stones be trying to teach you? Perhaps they are showing you where you need to change your approach, where you need to grow, or where you need to practice patience. Just as the traveler learned that the stone could be moved with the right mindset, we too can find a way through life's challenges if we approach them with mindfulness, flexibility, and a willingness to learn. Imagine for a moment that the next time you face an obstacle, instead of immediately reacting with frustration, you stop. You breathe. You observe. You ask yourself, what can this challenge teach me? And with that shift in perspective, you begin to move with the obstacle instead of against it. You may find that the stone isn't blocking your way, but creating space for new growth, new possibilities, and new insights. This story also teaches us about perseverance, the ability to keep moving forward even when things seem difficult. The traveler didn't give up when he couldn't move the stone right away. He didn't allow the stone to defeat him. He stayed open to a new possibility, and in doing so, he discovered a deeper lesson. Perseverance is not just about pushing through, it's about staying present and open to the lessons that each moment brings. Zen reminds us that life is full of obstacles, but it's not the obstacles themselves that matter. What matters is how we respond to them. Do we see them as opportunities for growth,
Or do we let them define our journey as failures? The stone on the path was not there to stop the traveler. It was there to help him see more clearly, to challenge him to slow down and reflect, and to ultimately uncover something greater than he expected. Now, think about your own path. What obstacles are in your way right now? Are you struggling with something in your life, feeling blocked or frustrated? Perhaps, like the stone, it's time to pause, reflect, and ask yourself what this obstacle can teach you. How can this challenge help you grow? What new possibilities could arise if you choose to move with it instead of against it? Take a deep breath now, and with every exhale, let go of any resistance you may be holding. Let go of the frustration. Let go of the need to control. Embrace the stone on your path, knowing that with a change in perspective, you can find the opportunity within the challenge. You are not your obstacles. They are simply stepping stones to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world. So, as we reflect on the story of the stone, let it serve as a reminder. Life's obstacles are not meant to stop us. They are meant to help us grow. The stone on your path may seem like a barrier, but it is really an opportunity for transformation. How you respond to it is what will shape your journey. Let's move on to the next story. And as we do, take with you this lesson. The stones in your path are not obstacles. They are opportunities waiting to be uncovered.
Now, let's dive into our fourth Zen story. A story that teaches us about clarity, peace, and the power of the mind to reflect reality. This is the story of the moon in the water. A Zen master once sat by a quiet lake, gazing into the still waters. The air was calm, the world around him peaceful. As he sat there, lost in the serenity of the moment, he saw something beautiful. The full moon, hanging high in the sky. Its bright, silvery light reflected perfectly on the surface of the water. It was a moment of pure tranquility, the moon and the water in perfect harmony. But as he continued to observe, something shifted. The wind began to stir, gently ruffling the surface of the water. The stillness was broken, and the moon's reflection began to ripple, its once perfect image distorting and shaking. The reflection in the water no longer looked like the moon at all. It became fragmented, scattered into pieces. The beauty that had once been clear and complete was now chaotic and unclear. The Zen master smiled gently and turned to his student, who had been watching with curiosity. He said, "The moon is always there, shining brightly in the sky. But when the water is disturbed, its reflection becomes unclear. The moon has not changed. It is the water that has changed. The same is true of the mind. When the mind is calm and still, it can reflect reality clearly. But when the mind is disturbed, it cannot see things as they truly are. The moon remains perfect, but our perception of it becomes clouded by the ripples of our thoughts and emotions." The lesson of this story is simple but profound. The clarity of our mind determines how clearly we see the world. Just like the moon, the truth is always there, shining brightly in our lives. It is unchanging, constant, and pure. But the ripples of our thoughts, worries, fears, and emotions often distort the way we perceive reality. Our inner turmoil clouds our ability to see things clearly, just as the wind distorts the reflection of the moon on the water. How many times have we experienced moments when our minds were racing with thoughts? Thoughts about the future, about our worries, our fears. And in those moments, it felt like everything was chaotic and unclear. The world seemed confusing, overwhelming, and we could not see the truth of the situation. Our perceptions were distorted by the ripples in our minds. But just like the moon, the truth remains unchanging. When the waters of the mind are still, we can see things clearly. The clarity of the mind is not something we need to find outside of us. It is something we must cultivate within. The more we learn to calm the ripples in our minds, the more we can see the world as it truly is, without distortion or confusion. Zen teaches us to practice mindfulness and meditation to quiet the mind. When we sit in stillness, we allow the ripples of our thoughts to settle. We let go of the distractions, the worries, and the endless chattering of the mind. And in that stillness, we can see things clearly, just as the calm water reflects the moon in its perfect form. Think about your own life. How often do you find your mind disturbed by the constant flow of thoughts? How often do you feel overwhelmed, as if your perceptions are clouded by worry, doubt, or fear? The Zen Master teaches us that the truth of who we are and the truth of our lives is always there, just like the moon in the sky. But when the mind is turbulent, we cannot see it clearly. We may feel lost, confused, or unsure of what is real. Take a moment now. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your mind like the surface of the water. Picture all the thoughts and emotions like ripples moving across the water, distorting your perception of the moon. Now, with each breath, imagine those ripples slowly calming until the water becomes still and clear. The moon, your true self, shines brightly, just as it always has, and you can see it clearly without distortion. This is the power of mindfulness. When we allow ourselves to simply be still, we stop the ripples in our minds. We allow our perception to clear, and in doing so, we are able to see the world more clearly, more calmly, and with greater peace. In those moments of stillness, we find that our anxieties, our worries, and our fears fade away, and we are left with a sense of clarity and inner peace. The Zen Master's teaching is that the truth does not change. It is always present, like the moon in the sky. But our perception of it depends on the state of our minds. When the mind is calm and clear, we can see things as they truly are. But when the mind is disturbed, the reflection of the world is unclear, and we are caught up in confusion and misunderstanding. Let's pause for a moment. Think about a time when your mind felt turbulent, when your thoughts were racing, when you felt unsure or anxious about something. How did that affect the way you saw the world around you? How did it affect the way you saw yourself? Now imagine what it would feel like if your mind was like the calm water, clear, still, and able to reflect the world around you with ease. Take a deep breath now, and as you exhale, imagine those ripples in your mind slowly fading. Let go of the noise, the distractions, and the worries. Allow yourself to rest in the stillness, knowing that just like the moon, the truth is always there, shining brightly. When we still the mind, we open ourselves up to the clarity and peace that have always been available to us. Zen reminds us that peace comes from within, not from the outside world. It comes from stilling the ripples in our minds and allowing ourselves to see clearly. So, as you move through your day, remember the moon and the water. Remember that your mind is like the water, and when it is still, you can see the world with clarity and peace. And even when the ripples come, remember that they are just temporary. The moon will always be there, shining brightly, waiting for you to see it clearly. Now, let's move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. The truth is always present, like the moon. The ripples in your mind are temporary, and peace comes when you let them settle.
Now, let's explore our next Zen story. A beautiful tale that teaches us about the nature of fortune, misfortune, and the impermanence of life's circumstances. This is the story of the farmer's luck. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the hills, there lived an old farmer. He had a small piece of land where he grew crops, raised animals, and worked hard every day to make a living. Though he was not wealthy, he was content with his simple life. He had a son who helped him on the farm, and the two of them shared the labor together. One day, the farmer's prize horse ran away. The neighbors heard the news and came to offer their sympathy. "How terrible," they said. "What bad luck you've had." But the farmer simply replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." A few days later, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned, and it brought with it 3 wild horses. The farmer's neighbors were astonished and came to congratulate him. "How lucky you are," they said. "Now you have more horses than ever before." But the farmer simply replied again, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." Soon after, the farmer's son went out to ride one of the new horses. Unfortunately, he was thrown from the horse and broke his leg. The neighbors once again gathered to express their sympathy. "How unfortunate this is," they said. "What bad luck you've had." But the farmer calmly replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." A few weeks later, the country went to war, and the emperor's soldiers came to the village to draft young men for the army. When they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they passed him by, leaving him behind. The neighbors, seeing the young man spared from war, came to the farmer once more and said, "How lucky you are! Your son is spared from the draft. What a blessing!" And again, the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." The story of the farmer teaches us an important lesson about how we perceive life's events. At first, the farmer's misfortune seemed clear. His horse ran away, and that was seen as a loss. But soon, it was revealed that this misfortune led to an unexpected gain, the return of his horse with more horses.
His neighbors saw this as good luck, but the farmer's response remained the same. Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see. When his son broke his leg, it seemed like the worst possible outcome, but this misfortune protected the boy from being drafted into a war. The farmer's calm and measured response, maybe so, maybe not, we'll see, teaches us that life's circumstances are not fixed, and what seems like misfortune one day may turn into fortune on another. How often do we react immediately to life's challenges? How often do we jump to conclusions about what is good or bad based on our first impressions? We might think that a situation is terrible, like losing a job, facing a setback, or experiencing disappointment. But just like the farmer, we don't always know the full picture. Sometimes what feels like misfortune is simply part of a much larger story that we can't see in the moment. Zen teaches us to embrace uncertainty and to let go of the need to label life's events as good or bad. Instead of rushing to judgment, we are encouraged to stay present and open, trusting that life's unfolding will reveal its own wisdom. The farmer's approach to life is one of acceptance, accepting each moment without clinging to it or rejecting it, and understanding that we cannot always know the future outcomes of what seems to be misfortune. Take a moment now to think about a situation in your life that you've labeled as bad, frustrating, or disappointing. Maybe it's a challenge at work, a personal setback, or something you've been struggling with. How might you view this situation differently if you could let go of the need to call it bad or good? What if, like the farmer, you could say to yourself, maybe so, maybe not. We'll see. Can you trust that, like the farmer's journey, there may be something deeper unfolding that you cannot yet see? This Zen story invites us to let go of our attachment to outcomes. We cannot always predict what will happen next, and often what seems like bad luck can lead to a future opportunity or blessing. The key is to stay open, present, and accepting, knowing that the flow of life is constantly changing. Perception is everything. Our reactions to life's events shape the way we experience them. The farmer's calm and detached perspective allowed him to move through life's ups and downs with grace. He did not allow himself to be swept up in judgment or frustration. Instead, he maintained a sense of equanimity, a balanced, peaceful mind that allowed him to see the unfolding events for what they truly were, just moments in the flow of life. The Zen teachings tell us that we cannot control everything in life. We cannot dictate what happens next or how things will unfold. But what we can control is our response. We can choose to see challenges with an open heart, to accept whatever comes our way with grace, and to trust that life's unfolding has its own wisdom. As you reflect on the farmer's story, consider how you might adopt his approach in your own life. When faced with challenges or setbacks, how can you remain open, patient, and trusting? Instead of rushing to judgment or trying to force life into a certain outcome, can you embrace the flow of life with acceptance? Take a deep breath now, and as you exhale, imagine releasing any judgment or resistance you might be holding on to. Let go of the need to control life's outcomes, and trust that, like the farmer, you will find peace in accepting each moment as it comes, without clinging to the idea of good or bad. Now, let's move on to the next story. But carry this lesson with you. Life's challenges and blessings are often intertwined. What seems like misfortune today may lead to something greater tomorrow. Trust the flow of life, and remember that each moment is part of a larger unfolding journey.
Now, we come to one of the most famous Zen stories,
a story that asks us to question our very understanding of reality. This is the story of the sound of one hand clapping. Once, a Zen master was sitting with his students, teaching them about the nature of existence. He asked them a question that had baffled many students before. What is the sound of one hand clapping? At first glance, this may seem like a simple riddle, a playful question with no real answer. The students tried to answer in different ways. Some of them thought of clapping their hands softly and quietly, while others tried to imagine a scenario where one hand could clap by itself. No one could come up with a clear answer. The master smiled gently and said, "The question is not about the sound itself. It is about what is beyond the sound. What is the mind that hears the sound? What is the essence of clapping beyond the physical act?" The students were silent, pondering the riddle, but they were still trapped in their logical minds, trying to solve the question using reasoning and logic, which is the way we are used to approaching problems. We assume that everything must have a clear, concrete answer, a cause and effect. But Zen teachings often invite us to go beyond rational thinking and explore deeper layers of truth that are not always accessible through the intellect. The master's question, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" is meant to break open the limitations of our logical minds. We are so accustomed to dualities, left and right and wrong, good and bad, and so on. But Zen invites us to move beyond these dualities, to experience reality as it truly is, without the need to label it, judge it, or define it. In Zen, we are taught that reality is not simply a collection of opposites, it is unified, whole, and beyond words. When we ask, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" we are invited to let go of the usual ways we think about the world and move into a direct experience of reality. This experience cannot be grasped by the mind alone. It must be felt, seen, and known in a way that goes beyond our ordinary thinking. The Zen master, by asking the question, invites the students to stop thinking and start experiencing. In fact, the true answer to the question is not something that can be spoken or described. It is something to be experienced directly. It is the sound of silence, the experience of presence beyond the noise of our thoughts and judgments. Now, let's pause for a moment. Close your eyes and let go of any thoughts that may be racing through your mind. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, let yourself sink into the stillness around you. There is no need to rush to an answer, no need to try to figure things out. Simply be present with whatever arises in your mind. Let the stillness wash over you, and allow yourself to experience the moment as it is, without labeling it, without judging it, just experiencing it. Zen teaches us that in this moment of stillness, there is no separation between the observer and the observed. There is no distinction between the question and the answer. There is only the experience of wholeness, the experience of oneness with the moment. As you sit in this stillness, imagine the question of the Zen master echoing in your mind. What is the sound of one hand clapping? But instead of trying to solve it with logic or reasoning, Simply sit with the question. Let it be. Allow the question to dissolve into the silence and feel the quietness within you. In this space, you may begin to realize that the question is not really about the sound at all. It is about presence. It is about being fully aware, fully present, without needing to figure everything out. It is the experience of being in the moment, just as it is, without interference from the mind. Take another deep breath now, and as you exhale, feel yourself becoming more and more present with the moment. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of your awareness. It is the sound of being fully awake to what is, without the need to analyze, to define, or to control. So as we reflect on this story, we are reminded that Zen is not about answering questions or solving riddles. It is about experiencing life directly, without the filters of the mind. It is about seeing the world as it truly is, without the distortions of duality or labels. And in that experience, we find a deeper, more profound understanding of reality, a reality that cannot be grasped by the intellect, but can only be felt through direct awareness. Let's carry this lesson with us. The true answer to life's questions is not found in the mind, but in the experience of being fully present. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of your awareness. It is the sound of being fully awake to what is, without the need to analyze, to define, or to control.
Now, let us move to our next Zen story, which teaches us a powerful lesson about the nature of suffering, acceptance, and the importance of letting go. This is the story of the parable of the arrow. Once, a man was struck by an arrow. He felt the pain, the sharp sting of the arrow as it pierced his skin. In that moment, his first thought was to pull it out, to end the pain. But as he reached for the arrow, he realized something. There was more than one arrow. In fact, there were two. The second arrow, the one he had not yet felt, was already on its way. And it was the second arrow that would hurt him even more than the first. The second arrow was not a physical one, but a mental one, a thought. It was the thought that came immediately after the first arrow, the thought that said, "Why did this happen to me? How could I have been so careless? Why is life so unfair?" The second arrow, the mental arrow, struck him harder than the first. The pain from the physical wound was sharp, but the pain from the thoughts, the suffering in his mind, was far greater. The first arrow had been unavoidable. It had simply been a part of life's journey. But the second arrow, the one that came from the mind, was something the man could choose to avoid. This parable is a powerful lesson about the nature of suffering. The first arrow, the physical pain, represents the inevitable suffering we experience in life. We all face moments of hardship, moments of loss, disappointment, and pain. These moments are part of the human experience, and we cannot avoid them. Just like the man who was struck by the first arrow, we are all subject to life's inevitable challenges. But the second arrow, the mental suffering,
is something different. It is the suffering we create for ourselves by reacting to the first arrow, by adding our own judgment and resistance. It's the suffering that comes when we resist what has already happened, when we dwell on the past, or when we worry about the future. The second arrow is the extra pain we carry with us, and it often hurts far more than the original wound. Zen teaches us to be aware of this second arrow. It teaches us that we cannot always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. The key is to learn how to stop the second arrow from striking. We can't always avoid the first arrow, but we can choose whether to let the second arrow land. Think about your own life. How often have you suffered not just from what happened to you, but from the thoughts and judgments that followed? Perhaps you lost something important, a job, a relationship, or a dream. The initial loss was painful, but the suffering that followed was often even worse. It was the mental pain, the regret, the self-blame, the worry about what would happen next. These are the second arrows, and they are the ones that keep us stuck in pain long after the original event. Take a moment now. Think about a situation in your life where you are experiencing difficulty. What is the first arrow? What is the initial pain or challenge? Now notice the second arrow. What are the thoughts that follow the pain? Are you blaming yourself? Are you judging the situation? Are you worrying about what might happen next? Zen teaches us that acceptance is the key to freedom from the second arrow. Acceptance does not mean we agree with the pain, but it means we accept it as part of life's journey. When we stop resisting, when we stop asking, "Why me?" we create space for peace. We stop the second arrow from landing. Take a deep breath now. As you inhale, imagine accepting the first arrow, the pain, the difficulty, the challenge. You don't need to resist it. Let it be, and allow it to pass through you. Now, as you exhale, imagine releasing the second arrow, the mental suffering. Let go of the judgment, the self-blame, the worry. In that moment, feel the weight of the second arrow lifting off your shoulders. Zen teaches us that suffering is a part of life, but extra suffering is optional. The pain we feel is real, but the mental suffering we add on to it is something we can choose to let go of. We are often our own worst enemies, creating stories in our minds that keep us trapped in pain. But when we choose to accept life as it is, without adding mental suffering, we can free ourselves from the second arrow. Let's reflect for a moment. How often do we find ourselves struggling with the second arrow? How often do we make things worse by adding our own mental suffering to the pain we have already experienced? Can we choose to let go of the second arrow? Can we learn to simply accept what is without adding extra judgment or resistance? Take another deep breath. Inhale acceptance. Exhale resistance. Let go of the need to add extra suffering to the challenges in your life. Embrace the idea that while pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You have the power to let go of the second arrow and to find peace even in difficult circumstances. The lesson of the parable of the arrow is clear. Don't add extra suffering to what is already painful. Life will give us challenges, but we don't have to make them harder by getting caught up in judgment, blame, or worry. By practicing acceptance, we can allow ourselves to move through the pain with grace and peace. Now, let us move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. The second arrow is the suffering we create in our minds. Let go of it, and you will find that the first arrow doesn't have to hurt nearly as much.
Now let us move to our next Zen story, one that speaks deeply about perception, illusion, and the nature of truth. This is the story of the finger pointing at the moon. A Zen master once pointed to the moon in the sky and said to his students, "Do not mistake the finger for the moon." The students were puzzled as they looked at the master's finger and then up at the moon. "What does he mean?" they wondered. The master smiled and continued, "The moon is the truth. The finger is the method. Never confuse the finger pointing at the moon with the moon itself." Zen is often about direct experience, about seeing things as they truly are, beyond the concepts and labels we apply to them. In this story, the master uses the finger as a symbol for the teachings, the methods, and the tools we use to understand truth. The moon, on the other hand, represents the ultimate reality, the truth itself. Imagine for a moment that the moon represents your true nature, the universal truth that underlies everything: life, existence, and experience. The finger is like the teachings, the spiritual practices, the paths, and the methods we use to point to that truth. But just like a finger, these teachings are not the truth themselves. They are simply guides that help us move in the right direction. Many of us spend so much time focusing on the finger, on the methods, on the labels and the concepts, that we forget to look at the moon, the truth itself. We become attached to the finger, to the practices, to the teachings, to the form of spiritual life, and we lose sight of the essence that those practices point toward. Zen teaches us that the path is not the destination. The teachings are not the truth. They are simply pointers, ways to help us see beyond our own conceptual thinking and into the deeper reality of existence. The Buddha's teachings, Zen practices, and all spiritual paths are like the finger pointing at the moon. They can show us the way, but they are not the way. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. What are you attached to? Are you holding on to a specific belief, practice, or way of thinking, believing that it holds the ultimate truth? Zen asks us to consider whether we are mistaking the finger for the moon. Are we more focused on the form of spiritual life, on the rituals, on the structure, rather than on the true experience of presence and reality that they are meant to point us toward? The truth of Zen is not something to be grasped intellectually. It is not something to be captured with words or concepts. It is something to be experienced directly, beyond the mind's need for understanding or explanation. The finger pointing at the moon may help us get closer, but the true essence is always beyond the concept itself. This Zen story also invites us to look at our everyday experiences. How often do we become attached to concepts, to ideas, to things, thinking that they are the source of happiness or truth? We might believe that happiness is found in wealth, success, relationships, or even in our spiritual practices. But these are just fingers pointing towards something greater. They are not the truth itself. The moon is the present moment, the experience of life,
the essence of being. And yet we often spend our lives grasping at the finger, never truly looking at the moon. We chase after fleeting experiences, seeking fulfillment in external things, but we fail to realize that the true source of peace and happiness lies not in what we grasp, but in the simple, direct experience of life as it is. Take a moment now to sit in stillness. Let go of any concepts or ideas that may be clouding your perception of the present moment. Release the need to understand, to grasp, to label. Simply sit in the experience of now. Look at the moon. Look at the truth, not as a concept or a thing, but as a lived experience. The moon is not something you can touch with your hands or capture in a thought. It is something you can only experience directly through your awareness, through your presence. Zen teaches us to stop chasing the finger. It asks us to stop focusing on the methods, the forms, and the concepts, and instead to focus on the experience of life itself. This is the essence of Zen, to live the truth, not to chase after it. As we reflect on this story, think about the ways in which you may be mistaking the finger for the moon. Are there things in your life that you're grasping onto, thinking that they hold the ultimate truth? Are you focusing too much on the form of spiritual life, on rituals, on practices, on beliefs, without experiencing the true essence they point to? The moon is the truth. It is the wholeness of life, the present moment, the simplicity of existence. When we let go of our attachment to the finger, to the forms, we begin to experience the truth directly. The moon does not need our understanding, it simply is. It is not something to be grasped or defined, but something to be experienced with an open heart and mind. Take another deep breath now. Inhale presence, and as you exhale, release the need to grasp, to label, to define. Allow yourself to experience the truth of the present moment, just as it is, without trying to fit it into any concept, any teaching, or any belief. The truth is already here, in this moment, and it is waiting for you to experience it directly.
Now, we come to another powerful Zen story, one that teaches us the importance of presence, mindfulness, and the art of receiving. This is the story of the cup of tea. The Zen master was once sitting in his meditation room when a student came to him. The student had heard many teachings from the master and was eager to understand the nature of Zen and enlightenment. The student had questions, many questions, and was determined to get answers. He had studied, he had practiced, and now he was ready for the final teachings that would lead him to enlightenment. The student approached the master and began speaking rapidly, listing all of his thoughts and questions. "Master, I've been practicing Zen for years. I've read many books, studied the scriptures, and meditated for hours. I want to know the secret of enlightenment. What is it? How do I achieve it? How do I truly understand Zen?" The master smiled gently, listening quietly. Without saying a word, he motioned to a small table beside him, where a teapot and a cup were resting. The master began to pour tea into the student's cup, but as he poured, he didn't stop when the cup was full. The tea continued to pour, spilling over the sides of the cup and onto the table. The student was surprised. "Master, the cup is full. The tea is overflowing. What are you doing?" he exclaimed. The master paused, still pouring, and looked at the student with a calm smile. "Your mind," he said, "is like this cup. it is already full. You come to me with your questions, your ideas, and your preconceptions, but you are already full. How can I give you anything if you do not empty your cup first? The student was stunned. He had come to the master eager for answers, but the master showed him that he was not yet ready to receive. He was so full of his own thoughts, opinions, and expectations that he could not make space for the teachings. The cup was full, and there was no room for anything new. This simple story holds a profound lesson about mindfulness, acceptance, and the nature of learning. In our lives, we often come with preconceived ideas, expectations, and attachments. We are like that cup, already filled to the brim with what we think we know. When we are filled with our own judgments, beliefs, and opinions, we leave no room for new understanding, growth, or learning. We come seeking answers, but we fail to recognize that in order to truly learn, we must first empty our minds and make space for new experiences. Zen teaches us that the mind must be empty in order to truly receive. Just like the student's cup, our minds must be open, not full of assumptions, conclusions, or expectations. When we approach life with an open heart and mind, we create space for new teachings, new experiences, and true transformation. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. How often do you approach new situations with a full cup? How often do you enter conversations, meetings, or experiences already filled with your own thoughts, judgments, and ideas? We may think we are open, but often we are closed off by the weight of our own expectations and assumptions. We are filled with preconceptions, and because of this, we may miss the deeper teachings that life is offering us. Now, imagine for a moment that you could empty your cup. Imagine letting go of all the things you think you know, all the labels and all the judgments. Picture your mind as an empty cup, ready to receive whatever life brings, without filtering it through your beliefs. What would it feel like to approach life with a completely open mind and heart? Zen invites us to empty our cup every day, to let go of our judgments and the weight of our past experiences. When we empty our minds of preconceived ideas, we create space for clarity, peace, and new insights to arise. We are no longer bound by what we have been taught in the past or the way we've always thought. We become open to what life presents us in the present moment. Now, let's take a deep breath together. Inhale deeply, and as you exhale, imagine your cup being emptied of everything you've been holding on to, your thoughts, your worries, your judgments. Imagine yourself opening up to the world as it is, without filtering it through your beliefs. In that space of openness, there is room for peace, room for clarity, and room for new understanding. The lesson of the cup of tea is this: in order to receive, we must first empty ourselves of what we already know. Only when we let go of our attachments, our ideas of what should be, our preconceptions and expectations, can we truly open ourselves to the teachings and wisdom that life offers. As you reflect on this story, ask yourself, what is filling my cup right now? What thoughts, beliefs, or judgments are preventing me from truly experiencing life as it is? How can I empty my cup today? Take another deep breath, and as you exhale, release the tension in your mind. Let go of the clutter, the noise, and the need to control. Allow your mind to become clear, like an empty cup, ready to receive the gifts of the present moment. With that, let's move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. Empty your cup, and in that space, you will find the true wisdom of life.
Now, let's explore our next Zen story, one that teaches us about the nature of simplicity, peace, and how we complicate the path to enlightenment. This is the story of "The Great Way is Not Difficult." Once a Zen master was walking with his students along a path through the forest. As they walked, they came across a beautiful pond, its water still and clear. The master paused, looking at the pond, and then turned to his students with a gentle smile. "The Great Way is not difficult," he said, "but there is one thing that keeps us from walking it." The students were confused, wondering what the master meant. The Great Way is filled with obstacles. It is not an easy journey. The master smiled again, and with great patience, he pointed to the still water in the pond. "Look at this water," he said. "It is clear, calm, and peaceful. But what happens when you throw a stone into it?" The students watched as the master tossed a small stone into the pond. The once still water began to ripple and stir, and the reflection of the trees and sky became distorted. "The water is like your mind," the master explained. "When the mind is calm, it can reflect the world clearly. But when the mind is disturbed by thoughts, desires, and attachments, the reflection becomes unclear. The same is true for the Great Way. It is not difficult, but we complicate it with our desires, our judgments, and our expectations. Zen teaches us that the path to enlightenment, the path to inner peace, is simple. We do not need to make it difficult. We do not need to chase after it, to force it, or to struggle against it. The Great Way is always available to us, but we get in the way by overthinking, overcomplicating, and trying to control the journey. How often do we make life more difficult than it needs to be? How often do we overthink, create stories, and fill our minds with distractions and emotions that keep us from seeing things clearly? The Great Way is simple, but we often make it complicated because of our own attachments to the world and to our thoughts. Take a moment now. Think about your own life. How often do you feel like the path is difficult? How often do you struggle with your goals, with your relationships, or with your own mind? Do you feel that you need to push harder, work more, or force things to happen? The Zen Master's lesson reminds us that the path to peace is not found in struggle. It is found in simplicity. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like the pond. It is calm, clear, and still. No ripples, no disturbances. In this space of calmness, you can see things clearly. You can be present without trying to control the future or analyze the past. The simplicity of the present moment is all that is needed. You are free from attachment, from expectation, and from the need to prove yourself or to chase after happiness. Happiness comes when we let go of the need to complicate things, when we allow life to unfold naturally. Zen teaches us that peace is always available, but we must be willing to let go of the things that disturb our minds. Our desires, our judgments, our comparisons, all of these things create ripples in the water. When we let go of them, the water becomes still again, and we can see the truth clearly. The Master's words, "The great way is not difficult," point us toward the simplicity of Zen practice. We do not need to make life complicated. We do not need to try to force enlightenment. All we need to do is let go, be still, and experience life as it is. Take a deep breath now, and as you exhale, imagine letting go of any expectations you may have about life. Release the desire to control, to figure things out, or to chase after something outside of yourself. Simply be in this moment and allow the simplicity of the present to fill your heart and mind. Zen reminds us that peace and enlightenment are not found through struggle or striving. They are found when we let go of our attachments and accept life as it is. The great way is always simple, but we complicate it by getting caught up in our own thoughts and desires. Now, reflect on your own path. What is complicating your journey? What thoughts, fears, or attachments are creating ripples in your mind? What would it feel like to let go of these distractions and simply be present in the moment? What if the path to peace was already here, waiting for you to walk it, but you simply needed to let go of the need to make it difficult? Take another deep breath. Inhale deeply, feeling the peace of the present moment. As you exhale, release the tension, the desire, and the need to control. Allow yourself to experience the great way, not as something distant or difficult, but as something already available to you in this moment. The Zen Master reminds us that the great way is simple. Do not make it difficult. Let go of the complications and walk with peace, acceptance, and presence.
Now, let us explore another Zen story, one that teaches us about the nature of suffering and how we can find peace by accepting what is rather than fighting against it. This is the story of the poisoned arrow. Once, a man was struck by a poisoned arrow. The wound was painful, and the poison quickly began to spread throughout his body. As he lay on the ground, writhing in pain, he called out for help. A doctor came to his aid, and as he began to tend to the wound, the man suddenly asked, "What kind of arrow was it? Who shot it? Was it a man or a woman? What kind of wood was used to make the bow? How far away was the archer? What was the name of the person who shot the arrow?" The doctor, surprised by the man's questions, replied, "You are in great pain. This is not the time to ask about who shot the arrow or what kind of wood was used to make the bow. First, we must treat the wound and stop the poison from spreading." But the man insisted, "I must know the answers to these questions. I cannot move forward until I understand everything about this arrow and its origins." The doctor, realizing the man's confusion, spoke gently. "You are asking about things that are irrelevant to the immediate situation. The most important thing right now is to tend to your wound, to stop the poison, and to heal. The questions you ask cannot change the fact that you have been wounded. Your focus should be on healing, not on what has already happened." The man was quiet for a moment, and then, with a deep sigh, he accepted the doctor's advice and allowed him to treat the wound. The poison was stopped, and in time, the man healed. This story is a powerful lesson about how we often create more suffering for ourselves by focusing on things that are beyond our control, things that have already happened, things that are irrelevant to the present moment. The man's questions about the arrow in the archer were not wrong in themselves, but they were irrelevant to the most pressing issue, his healing. The poisoned arrow represents the suffering and pain that we all face in life. We cannot avoid pain. It is an inevitable part of being human. But often we create more suffering by dwelling on the past, asking questions that cannot be answered, or focusing on things that are no longer relevant to the present moment. The more we focus on these distractions, the more we prolong our suffering and prevent ourselves from healing. Zen teaches us that suffering comes in two forms. The first arrow, which is the pain or hardship we experience, and the second arrow, which is the suffering we create by thinking about the pain, obsessing over the past, and resisting what is. The first arrow may be inevitable, but the second arrow is something we often inflict on ourselves. Think about your own life. How often do you find yourself asking questions about situations that have already passed? How often do you dwell on the why and how of your struggles instead of simply accepting them and moving forward? The man in the story was consumed with finding answers, even though the most important thing was to tend to his wound and heal. When we experience pain or suffering, it's easy to get caught up in trying to understand why it happened, who is to blame, or what we could have done differently. But just like the man in the story, these questions often keep us from healing. The past is already gone, and worrying about it only creates more suffering in the present moment. The most important thing we can do when we are in pain is to focus on healing, to focus on the present moment, and to let go of the need to understand or control everything. Take a moment now. Think about something in your life that is causing you pain or suffering. What are the questions you are asking? Are you focusing on things that have already happened? Things that cannot be changed? Are you asking, why me? Or how did this happen? Instead of asking these questions, Zen invites us to ask a different one. What can I do to heal right now? Imagine that instead of focusing on the past, you focus on the present. Instead of wondering about what you could have done differently, you focus on what you can do right now to ease your suffering. Maybe it's a small act of self-compassion, a simple decision to let go of the past, or a conscious choice to focus on healing and acceptance. The Zen Master's teaching is this: the most important thing in any moment of suffering is to focus on healing, not on the story you create about the pain. When we shift our focus from the past and from things that cannot be changed, we create space for healing and peace. Now let us pause for a moment. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. As you breathe in, imagine filling your mind with the intention to heal, to let go, and to focus on the present. Exhale the weight of the past, the questions, the judgments, and the pain. Let the breath remind you that you are not defined by your suffering, and that healing begins when you stop asking why and start asking, how can I heal? The story of the poisoned arrow invites us to accept suffering without dwelling on it, to focus on healing, and to let go of the need to constantly analyze the past. Life brings us pain and challenges, but we do not need to add extra suffering by obsessing over things we cannot change. So as we reflect on this story, ask yourself, what are the second arrows I am carrying? Are there areas of your life where you are adding unnecessary suffering by clinging to the past? Can you let go of those second arrows and focus on your healing? Healing begins when we let go of what cannot be changed and focus on what we can do in the present moment. Take another deep breath. Inhale acceptance, and as you exhale, feel the release of mental suffering. Let the story of the poisoned arrow guide you toward healing, letting go and finding peace in the present moment. With that, let's move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. The first arrow is inevitable, but the second arrow is optional. Focus on healing, not on dwelling in the past.
Now, let us explore one of the most profound Zen stories, one that beautifully captures the journey of self-discovery, the path to enlightenment, and the process of awakening. This is the story of the ox-herding pictures. In ancient times, a Zen master created a series of 10 pictures known as the ox-herding pictures to illustrate the stages of spiritual awakening. The pictures depict a young boy searching for an ox, and each image shows a different stage of the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. The first picture shows the boy in search of the ox. He stands in a vast, empty landscape, looking lost and confused. He does not know where the ox is, or even what it looks like. His journey has just begun, and all he knows is that he feels a deep longing within him, a yearning to find something, though he does not yet understand what it is. This is the stage of ignorance, where we are unaware of the deeper truths that lie within us. In the second picture, the boy catches a glimpse of the ox. It is still distant, hidden in the shadows, but the boy can feel its presence. He now knows what he is searching for, and the search becomes more focused. This represents the stage of beginning awareness, where we begin to awaken to something greater, but we are still unsure of how to fully connect with it. In the third picture, the boy attempts to catch the ox. He is chasing it, running after it with effort and determination. However, the ox is elusive and difficult to catch. This stage represents the struggle of the spiritual journey, where we try to force ourselves to reach enlightenment or truth. We chase after it, trying to control it, but it feels like something just out of our grasp. As the journey continues, the boy eventually learns to tame the ox. In the fourth picture, the boy has caught the ox, but it is still wild and unruly. He struggles to hold on to it as the ox resists, pulling in different directions. This represents the discipline and effort required to train the mind. We begin to see our own patterns of thinking, and we begin to gain control over them, but the mind still resists. In the fifth picture, the boy is shown riding the ox with a sense of mastery and balance. The ox is no longer wild, and the boy has learned to guide it. He no longer chases the ox or struggles with it. Instead, he moves in harmony with it. This is the stage of mind control, where we no longer fight against our thoughts or desires. We have learned to ride the ox, to work with the mind instead of resisting it. As the journey continues, the boy begins to leave behind the ox. In the sixth picture, the boy is walking freely without the need for the ox to guide him. The ox is still there, but it is no longer needed. This represents the stage of detachment, where we let go of our dependence on external things to bring us peace. We no longer need to rely on methods or practices, for we have found peace within ourselves. In the seventh picture, the boy has reached the stage of emptiness. He is no longer attached to the ox, and the path ahead is clear. The landscape is empty, but he is no longer alone. He is one with everything, and the journey itself has dissolved. This stage represents the realization that there is no separation between the seeker and the sought. The path and the goal are one. In the eighth picture, the boy is shown in a state of peaceful contemplation, gazing into the infinite horizon. His journey is complete. He has realized his true nature. He no longer seeks the ox, for he has become the ox. The ox represents the mind, and the boy represents the seeker. In this moment of realization, there is no distinction between the two. In the ninth picture, the boy is shown returning to the world with a radiant smile. He no longer needs to search for the ox, for he has become the ox. He is no longer bound by the illusions of duality. He moves freely through the world, sharing his wisdom and experience with others. This stage represents the return to the world after enlightenment, where the awakened individual can live fully in the world while remaining grounded in their true nature. In the 10th and final picture, we see the boy and the ox disappearing into the mountains, becoming one with the landscape. There is no separation, no distinction, no ego. The journey has come full circle, and the boy has become the truth itself. This represents the stage of total integration, where the seeker has become one with the universe, with all things, and no longer feels the need to search. This journey, from the first picture of ignorance to the final picture of unity with all things, is a beautiful illustration of the spiritual path. It shows us that enlightenment is not a destination, but a process. It is a journey that begins with ignorance and ends with the realization of oneness with the universe. Zen teaches us that we are all on this journey. We may not always recognize it, but each step we take on the path brings us closer to our true nature. The ox-herding pictures remind us that spiritual growth is not linear. It is full of challenges, struggles, and moments of doubt, but it is also full of beauty, peace, and moments of deep realization. Take a moment now and reflect on your own spiritual journey. Where are you on the path? Are you still in the early stages, searching for the ox? Are you struggling to tame the wild ox of your mind? Or have you reached the point where you no longer need to chase, where you are one with the ox? Wherever you are, remember that the journey itself is the teacher. Every step, every challenge, every moment of doubt is part of the process. Zen reminds us that the path is the goal. There is no need to hurry, no need to rush to the finish line. The ox-herding pictures show us that every moment of the journey is precious, and each step brings us closer to the realization of our true nature. Take a deep breath now, and with each exhale, feel yourself moving further on your own journey, wherever that may be. Know that you are not alone. The path is always with you, and with each step, you are coming closer to the truth of who you are. Let us move on to the next story, but carry with you this wisdom. The journey is the goal. Embrace each step, each challenge, and know that with each moment, you are awakening to the truth of who you are.
Let us now move to another Zen story that invites us to reflect on wisdom, humility, and what it truly means to know. This is the story of the one who knows. Once, a student came to a Zen master, eager to understand the nature of Zen and the secrets of enlightenment. The student had studied many teachings and read countless books. He was filled with knowledge, and he believed that if he could only learn the right teachings and understand the right concepts, he would finally attain enlightenment. So he approached the master with a sense of confidence and pride, believing that he had already gained a significant amount of wisdom. "Master," the student said, "I have studied Zen for many years. I have read the sutras, I have meditated, and I have practiced diligently. I know much about the nature of the self, the mind, and the path to enlightenment. What more do I need to do to achieve the ultimate truth?" The Zen master looked at the student for a moment, then asked, "Do you know the sound of one hand clapping?" The student was taken aback. He had heard the question before. This was a well-known Zen koan. He had read about it in his studies and thought he knew the answer. Confidently, he replied, "Yes, master, I know the sound of one hand clapping. It is the sound of silence." The master smiled and said, "No, that is not the answer. Come back to me when you truly know the sound of one hand clapping." The student was confused. He thought he knew the answer, but the master had rejected it. So he went away, thinking that perhaps he needed to study more, to understand more, to find the right answer. He continued his meditation, practiced harder, and read even more teachings, but still the master's words echoed in his mind. "Come back to me when you truly know the sound of one hand clapping." Months passed, and the student became frustrated. He worked tirelessly, but no matter how much he read, no matter how deeply he meditated, he could not find the right answer. He thought he knew so much, but he realized that his knowledge was limited. The answer still eluded him. One day, in deep meditation, the student experienced a profound shift. Instead of searching for an intellectual answer, he let go of the need to understand, to grasp, to analyze. In that moment of release, he suddenly felt a sense of direct awareness, a stillness in his mind. The question, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" was no longer something to be answered with words. It was a feeling, a realization beyond thought. The student rushed back to the master, full of excitement. "Master," he said, "I understand now. The sound of one hand clapping is not something that can be heard with the ears. It is something that must be experienced in silence. It is beyond concept, beyond the mind's grasp." The master smiled and said, "Now you know. Now you have truly understood. The one who knows is the one who has let go of knowing. The path to enlightenment is not found in knowledge, but in experiencing. True wisdom comes from direct experience, not from the accumulation of facts or concepts." This story teaches us a powerful lesson about knowledge and wisdom. In our lives, we often believe that knowing is the key to enlightenment or peace. We study, we read, we accumulate information, thinking that the more we know, the closer we will get to the truth. But Zen teaches us that true wisdom is not about knowing more, but about letting go of the need to know. The student in the story thought that knowledge was the answer. He believed that understanding the right concepts or memorizing the right teachings would lead him to enlightenment. But the master's teaching was clear. Wisdom is not found in concepts or words. It is found in the experience of stillness, in the direct experience of the present moment, free from the need to analyze or define it. Think about your own life. How often do you try to find answers to life's questions through knowledge alone? How often do you seek to understand your feelings, your relationships, or your struggles by reading more books, learning more concepts, or trying to find the right answer? The Zen Master's teaching is a reminder that true wisdom is found in experience, not in intellectual knowledge. Zen invites us to stop searching for answers outside of ourselves, to stop chasing after concepts and simply be present with what is. The experience of life itself, without the need to define it or label it, is where true wisdom lies. Wisdom comes when we stop trying to understand everything and instead open ourselves to direct experience. Now let's pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and let go of any thoughts or judgments that may be clouding your mind. Let go of the need to understand, to figure everything out, and simply be present in this moment. What can you experience right now without labeling it, without analyzing it? Let go of your need to know, and simply allow yourself to experience the present moment as it is. In Zen, we are reminded that the truth cannot be grasped with the mind. It is not something to be understood through knowledge or concepts. It is something to be experienced directly, beyond words, beyond thoughts, and beyond the need to analyze. The sound of one hand clapping is not a riddle to be solved. It is a direct experience that can only be known through silence and stillness. Take another deep breath. Inhale peace and exhale the need to know. Let go of any ideas, expectations, or concepts, and simply be present with what is. True wisdom comes when we stop trying to understand everything and instead open ourselves to experience life as it is, without the interference of the mind. As we reflect on this story, let us remember that true wisdom is found in the experience of life, not in the pursuit of knowledge. Let us embrace the present moment, free from the need to analyze, define, or label it. In that openness, we find the true answer to the sound of one hand clapping. It is the sound of silence, the sound of awareness, the sound of being.
Now, let's explore the Zen story of the Gateless Gate, a teaching that brings us face to face with paradox, mystery, and the unknown. The story begins with a Zen master who spoke to his students about the concept of enlightenment. He described a gate that led to enlightenment, but he also said, "This gate has no door. There is no way to enter, and yet the gate is always open." The students were confused. They had heard of gates, of ways, of paths to enlightenment, but how could there be a gate without a door? How could there be a way without a path? The master smiled at their confusion and said, "The gate to enlightenment is always open, but we do not see it because we are looking for the wrong door. The path is always present, but we are so focused on finding a way to enter that we miss the point. The gate is not something outside of you, it is within you. But you must be willing to see it without searching for it. The gateless gate is a paradox. In Zen, many teachings are meant to point us to what is beyond concepts, beyond dualistic thinking, beyond this and that, yes and no, right and wrong. The idea of a gate without a door challenges our usual way of thinking. We are used to clear distinctions. Gates have doors, and paths lead to destinations. But Zen asks us to let go of our need for certainty and embrace the unknown. The key to understanding this gate is to recognize that the gate is not a physical structure. It is the mind itself. The door is our attachment to form, our need to understand and categorize the world. When we let go of the need for clear answers, when we release our attachment to structure and logic, we can enter the gate that has no door. We can experience enlightenment without having to seek it. In Zen, the teachings are often full of paradoxes. They are not meant to confuse us, but to help us move beyond our usual way of thinking. The gateless gate asks us to stop looking for external answers and to look inward, to awaken to the present moment without needing to define it, to label it, or to understand it. True wisdom is found not in the mind's need to figure things out, but in the acceptance of the present moment as it is. Take a moment now. Close your eyes and reflect on a question or challenge you're facing in your life. Perhaps it is something you have been trying to understand or resolve for a long time. What if the answer is not something you need to figure out? What if instead of searching for a way in, you allowed yourself to simply be present with the question, without needing to find a solution? Can you let go of your need to define the path and simply trust that the gate is always open, always present, whether you see it or not? Zen teaches us that enlightenment is not a goal to be achieved, but a truth to be realized. The gateless gate is not something we can reach by intellectual understanding or by following a prescribed path. It is something we realize when we let go of our attachments to understanding, to control, and to certainty. When we let go of our need to know and simply rest in the present moment, the gate becomes apparent to us. The gateless gate is always open, but we cannot enter it through the mind. It is not a physical door that we can open with effort. It is a shift in perception, a shift in consciousness. When we stop searching, when we stop clinging to our beliefs, judgments, and expectations, we suddenly realize that we are already in the gate. We are already in the presence of truth. Zen asks us to let go of our attachment to understanding, to our need to define, to our need for certainty. The teachings, the practices, and the methods are like fingers pointing toward the moon. They are not the moon themselves. When we cling to the fingers, we miss the moon. When we cling to the forms, we miss the truth. Take another deep breath now. Inhale the stillness of the present moment, and as you exhale, release the need to figure things out. Let go of the pressure to have all the answers, and simply allow yourself to be present, open, and receptive. The gateless gate is not something you have to search for. It is already here, in this moment. Zen teaches us that the truth is always present. It is not something to be grasped or sought after. It is something to be realized when we stop searching, stop seeking, and simply experience life as it is. The gateless gate is always open, but we can only enter it when we let go of our preconceptions, our judgments, and our need to control. Reflect for a moment. Where in your life are you still searching for a door? Where are you trying to control, to define, or to understand things that are beyond your comprehension? What would it feel like to simply let go and allow the gate to open on its own? The journey through the gateless gate is not about finding the right path or solving the right puzzle. It is about letting go of all paths and realizing that the gate is already open, right here, right now. Take a final deep breath, and as you exhale, imagine yourself walking through the gate, free from the need to search, free from the need to understand. Simply be present and know that the gate is always open to you. Let's move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. The gate is always open, and the truth is always present. Stop searching and simply allow yourself to experience it.
Now, let us explore the Zen story of The Moon Cannot Be Stolen, a story that teaches us about attachment, non-attachment, and the true nature of freedom. Once, a Zen master lived in a small village. One evening, a thief sneaked into the master's humble hut and stole all his possessions. The Zen master, upon discovering the theft, was not upset. He didn't cry or lament the loss of his belongings. Instead, he simply smiled. The thief, feeling guilty and anxious, returned to the master's hut the next night, intending to return the stolen items. When he arrived, the master greeted him with kindness and said, "I have nothing to return to you, for everything you took was not truly mine to begin with. But what I can give you is something more precious than any material possession. I can give you freedom." The thief, confused and curious, asked the master, "Master, what do you mean by freedom?" The Zen master replied, "The moon is always shining in the sky, but no one can steal it. The moon cannot be captured by any thief or locked away in any treasure chest. It is always free. The same is true for the peace and joy within you. You may think you can steal from others or that your happiness comes from external things, but true freedom comes from within. The moon cannot be stolen, and neither can your true peace." The thief, now deeply moved by the master's words, sat quietly, reflecting on the teaching. For the first time, he understood that true wealth is not found in material possessions or external gains. It is found in non-attachment, in the ability to let go of the things we cling to, and in the realization that what we truly seek is always already within us. Zen teaches us that attachment to external things, whether it is possessions, desires, relationships, or achievements, can cause us to feel tied down and trapped. We believe that our happiness depends on these things, that we must acquire more, hold on tighter, or protect what we have. But the Zen master's teaching reminds us that true peace and true freedom are not bound by external circumstances. They are within us, like the moon that shines brightly in the sky, unaffected by the actions of others.
The moon is a symbol of truth and peace. It is always there, shining even when we cannot see it. Similarly, our true nature, our peace, joy, and freedom are always with us, even when we do not recognize them. They are not something we need to chase after or acquire. They are simply something we need to realize and embrace. Take a moment now to reflect on your own life. What are you attached to? What possessions, desires, or expectations do you hold on to tightly, believing that they are the source of your happiness? How often do you seek happiness outside of yourself, thinking that if you just have more, do more, or achieve more, you will finally be at peace? The Zen Master's words invite us to realize that true peace is not found in external things, but in the non-attachment to them. True freedom comes when we let go of our need to control, our need to possess, and our need to define our happiness by what we have or what we lack. Zen teaches us that we can experience the moon's light. We can experience inner peace, joy, and freedom by releasing our attachment to the things we think we need. When we stop clinging to material possessions or the external world, we begin to experience the moon within us, the stillness, the joy, and the peace that are always present, waiting for us to recognize them. Take a deep breath now. Inhale deeply, and as you exhale, let go of any attachment you may be holding on to. Imagine yourself releasing the things you think you need for happiness, whether it is possessions, desires, or worries. Let them float away, like leaves on the wind. As you exhale, feel the freedom of non-attachment. The moon is not affected by the thief who tries to steal it. Similarly, your peace and joy cannot be stolen by anyone or anything. They are within you, shining brightly no matter what is happening around you. You cannot lose them, for they are always present, like the moon in the sky. Zen invites us to see that freedom comes from within. It is not something that depends on external circumstances, but something we can cultivate by letting go of our attachment to the things we believe will bring us peace. The more we let go, the more we can experience the moon's light within us. We do not need to chase it, we simply need to stop blocking it. Take a deep breath now. Inhale peace. And as you exhale, feel your heart and mind become lighter. Release your attachment to the things you think you need for happiness, and make space for the peace that is always present. The moon cannot be stolen, and neither can your true peace. As we reflect on this story, remember that the moon is a symbol of the truth that resides within you. You are already free, already at peace, and already whole. When we let go of our attachments, we realize that the peace we seek is already shining within us, like the moon in the night sky. Let's move on to the next story, but carry this lesson with you. True freedom comes from non-attachment. The moon is always shining, and your peace is always present. You do not need to chase it. You simply need to let go and experience it.